This is Anarchast.
Hey peaceful people, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I'm super excited to have on a guy I've wanted to have on for almost over a year now, but we just kept missing each other at Libertopia and Porkfest, mostly because I was just too drunk half the time, but really super excited to have him on. He's one of the great people in this community of anarchists, Larken Rose. He's got an amazing story, and he's of course done so many great pieces of work, including The Most Dangerous Superstition, the book. He's got great videos like If I Were King and The Tiny Dot, and what's the other one you were just mentioning, Larken?
I'm Allowed to Rob You.
Yeah, so I'm Allowed to Rob You.
It's gotten like hundreds of thousands of views now.
And he also did Why You Should Shoot a Cop. He's a very interesting guy. But of course, the very first question I always have to ask is, how did you become an anarchist?
Well, it was really a matter of, I was raised conservative, Republican, libertarian-leaning, constitutionalist, that general ballpark. And over the years, it was really just a matter of, I like to debate and argue, and I like to win. And you don't win if there are contradictions inside your own head. So I'd have an argument, and I'd back up and say, yeah, on that one point, I wasn't all that, here I am saying, you have no right to force me to pay for your welfare state, but for some reason, I get to force you to pay for my military. So little contradictions like that, and I kept whittling them away. A lot of this process happened talking about things with my wife Tessa, and we both sort of helped nudge each other until we just fell off the status cliff entirely and realized, whoops, we just whittled away the last thing that is government, and what's left is freedom. So I sort of accidentally got there, and it was a very slow process. I know a lot of people doing it a lot faster now, but it took me years to let go of that thing of, well, we need government. We have to have a ruling class to make sure the good guys win. So it's just a slow arguing with other people and then arguing with myself to try to get consistent. And eventually I came to the realization that you cannot be consistent and believe in government. It doesn't work. The concept itself is self-contradictory. So I just kind of fell off the political spectrum and turned into a voluntarist.
Now, I know you have a very interesting story about how you ran into the government, specifically the IRS. Did that come before or after your conversion?
That actually came after. I've been an anarchist for 16, going on 17 years. A lot of people assume that my adventures with the federal extortion racket must have made me into this. I was an anarchist long before. In fact, the prosecution brought that up in their closing, and he's an anarchist.
That's what they said about Manning, too.
Oh, yeah, which had nothing to do with the case or anything else. And but, yeah, I already didn't believe in government. And I already knew that it was inherently bogus, but interestingly, even though that was a legal issue, politician scribble, magic, voodoo garbage, a lot of people told me that by watching that and watching the trial and the meetings and everything that led up to it, it actually started them on the path to realizing what government is and that it's not okay and that it's inherently illegitimate, which is sort of funny, starting with a legal issue to end up with, hey, the whole legal basis is the whole premise of legality is bogus. But apparently it nudged a lot of people in that direction, which I'm happy about. I wish I didn't have to sit in a cage for a year, but I got some books written and stuff done. So.
Yeah, that's great. And so you've been anarchist 16, 17 years, so you must have seen quite a bit of changes in the world of anarchy in that time.
It's amazing. And a thing I often say, and I'll say it again because it's worth saying, is, 10 years ago, I was already saying what I'm saying now. Hopefully I've gotten better at it along the way, but I was saying the same things, and I knew maybe 6 people who dared to call themselves anarchists. And now I know 6,000 at least. And I see an exponential curve happening of people able to think about this. And to me, that's the entire thing. The actual argument and the explanation is pretty darn simple. It's so simple as to almost be self-evident. Things like self-ownership and the non-aggression principle, it's it takes about 3 seconds to demonstrate that government can't be legitimate. Like, if I can't give someone a right I don't have, then how did government get any that I don't have? Who gave it to them? So to me, the challenge isn't even the rational argument, which is pretty darn easy. It's overcoming the psychological attachment to what's really a faith-based belief in this mythical deity called government. And for some reason, and I don't know, the internet helps, of course, but recently I see lots and lots and lots of people able to think about these things when those very same people 10 years ago, they would just, no, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to think about it, go away, you're extreme. So I don't know what's happening, but it's turning into a landslide, and it's thrilling to watch, especially after spending the first 10 years banging my head against a brick wall and nobody paying any attention. So
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it is the internet, and I think it's changing everything. And I remember I was around at the start of the internet. I was an early internet entrepreneur in 1993, and I had these wild predictions. I wasn't even an anarchist at the time. I didn't even know what the word meant, but I basically was an anarchist. I just didn't know what the word was. And I remember saying, within 5-10 years, there'll be no more wars. All this government stuff will just go away. And I was totally wrong because I didn't realize, because most people didn't even start using the internet until like 98, 99, most
Right.
people. And then, of course, it took a few years. And then there was no YouTube or anything like that, or Facebook. A lot of these things, apparently, I don't know what your thoughts are, they might have been started by the government. But if they did, it's really backfired on them, because just little things like Facebook, little memes that people put up. And, like you said, all these things we're talking about are so obvious, they should be self-evident to someone who isn't brainwashed. So when you just put these little sayings that make total perfect sense, after a period of time, people start to actually think about it. And then they might just do a Google search, and then they'll find one of your videos, or they'll find something else. And I think it's really snowballing, and it's really exciting. And now you're seeing that the word libertarian is now like a cool thing. Glenn Beck says he's a libertarian, and Bill Maher says he's libertarian. They're not libertarians.
They're lying, but it's cool that they realize it's a good label to have.
Yeah, and you can actually see even the Republican Party realizing that they need to get the libertarians involved. But what they don't realize is that will actually destroy the Republican Party, because once people become libertarian, it's not too long before they start to become anarchists, because you're pretty much very far down the road at that point. And if you keep thinking a little bit further, it just becomes quite evident that we don't need government at all. And so it's very exciting times, but I really think the U.S. government is not going to go quietly into the night, unfortunately.
No, I'm expecting lots of vicious nastiness, but I think a lot of the vicious nastiness we see now, the jump towards police state lunacy, is an indication that they know they're losing. They're desperate to grab onto power, and they're doing something that never ever works. I mean, if a ruler starts to lose the loyalty of his subjects, if they stop feeling an obligation to obey, brute force is not going to keep that empire alive. Like, it may delay the collapse a little tiny bit, but we're seeing that now. A bunch of people in this country and around the world are figuring out, I'm not actually beholden to these political crooks. I don't have an obligation to give them my money and bow to them and obey their garbage. And when that happens, this relatively small gang of control freaks cannot rule the world by brute force. They have to do it by indoctrination and mind control. And then if occasionally there's one little rebel that comes out, they can stomp on him and blow him up or whatever. But you can't do that to hundreds of millions of people if they wake up. And they know they're losing. They know they're losing the battle of philosophy and ideas. And they're jumping for brute force control. And it's going to hugely backfire. But I am worried that in the meantime, they're going to hurt a lot of innocent people, because tyrants just never learn. And they don't care about innocent people, so they do lots of destruction as their throne falls over. But it's falling over. This empire's finished.
Yeah, and for people, if you haven't seen Larken's video, if I was king, I believe, is that what it's called?
If you were king.
If you were king, right. Excellent, and especially for children, just to kind of show them just how basically how it all works, and how it will fall apart once they start to actually take the mask off and actually show what they really are, which is just violence. Mm-hmm. And really interesting this week, I don't know if you heard John Kerry's quote. He said, "This internet is making it really hard to govern."
I did see that quote. Oh, yes. That's the
It's
best
so hard
news
to,
I've heard all day.
I know. It's so hard to control these people with the internet. How are we going to
They have
do it?
ideas and thoughts and stuff.
They can communicate without just propaganda on their TV, and
Gotta put
yeah,
an end
it's
to
great.
this. Oh, that's hilarious.
So what's up with you? You've been putting out a lot of videos lately. Are you? Because I've noticed for a while, and maybe I'm wrong on this. It didn't seem like you were up on YouTube too much, but I've seen a lot come out lately. Are you getting back into doing more active stuff, or am I wrong on that?
I've actually there's been a million things in the works, and it's sort of sporadic when they get finished and come out. So it'll seem like nothing comes out for a month, and then 5 come out in a row, and it's I was working the whole time, but you just can't tell for the first month because nothing comes out. At this point, I think I have like a dozen more YouTube videos in the works, which seems to me the easiest way to get ideas out there is just some stupid little 10-minute video that doesn't try to explain the whole world. It basically just takes one little piece of statism and messes it up, messes with people's heads, so they go, yeah, that does sort of seem weird, and doesn't even bother to answer it, just because if you can get them to think, yeah, why? How does that add up? And then they go and search for answers. That's way better than sit down, I want to give you a 2-hour lecture on philosophy. So, yeah, mostly what I focus on is just these little silly YouTube videos. And I am working on a secret weapon, but I'm not telling you what it is.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I have a concept. I'll run it by you. Just the other day in Acapulco, where I am, we had a fairly decent-sized earthquake, 6.1, and definitely shook things up. And my dogs were very scared. And it was funny because I have 2 Chihuahuas and then a Cocker Spaniel and a Boxer. And the Chihuahuas kind of yap at the other dogs quite a bit. And if they try to get on my bed, they'll definitely get them off the bed. But after the earthquake, all my dogs were on my bed, all completely submissive because they were so scared. And so it got me thinking about, because I think the financial elite, the political elite, those sort of people, the people who run government and run central banks, I think they think of us as like animals, like dogs. And I think they use fear to keep us in compliance. And that's what they've been doing over and over in the US with 9/11 and all that kind of stuff. They propagate these things to keep people in fear. So my theory is perhaps one thing we could do, one way that we could sort of help people to move beyond this statist idea is to help them get over fear. And I'm not sure how we can do that, but I wanted to just run that idea by you.
Yeah, absolutely. Although there is sort of a flip side that people, when people get worried and scared and government comes along and says, give us power, we'll fix it. And people have been following that for as long as there have been people. But at the same time, sometimes things get so bad that they figure out who they should be scared of, which is the people in power. And then they band together against that. And we're starting to see a little bit of that in this country. But it's slow in happening. I mean, the approval rating of Congress is like single digits or something. It's like nothing. Like nobody trusts them, and that's so. In some ways, fear and worry, if it's actually justified and people understand the cause of the problem, can be a good motivator. But of course, the tyrants always try to use it in the other direction. That, oh my gosh, economic troubles, give us power. Oh my gosh, crime, give us power. Terrorism, give us power. But I do think a lot of people are getting tired of that and realizing they don't ever fix anything. Like, they scare the heck out of us and things fall apart, but they don't ever fix anything. I happen to think this economic collapse that's begun, that we're seeing, I do believe the Great Depression was probably engineered to scare people and make them go, oh, big government, please save us. If this one was engineered, which wouldn't surprise me, I think they botched it up real bad because it's getting away from them. And after a certain point, botching things up doesn't serve those in power when you have thousands or millions of people talking about being self-sufficient and getting along, and the whole agorist movement of we're just going to trade with each other and deal like we're equal human beings and heck with the government. When people respond that way, the fear-mongering doesn't really help those in power. I think if this was their doing, it got away from them.
Yeah, like most things, like the internet maybe was sort of initially created by some government entity, like at least to some extent, and then possibly YouTube, possibly Facebook had some sort of CIA involvement. A lot of the things, they're not smart people. They're actually, I've met a lot of these sort of Bilderbergers and all these. They're really not that smart. They're just power hungry, and I think they. And here's a thing I hear a lot. A lot of people think Julian Assange was actually created by the government to do something. I'm not sure, but even that, if that's the case, that's backfiring, because people are waking up and saying, "Hey, look at all this," and all these things backfire on them. Everything government does, always has the opposite reaction to what they want.
Right. Yeah, my first book was called How to Be a Successful Tyrant, the Megalomaniac Manifesto. And it's written as a manual for somebody who wants to rule the world. And I would only give them maybe a C- now. I really think the quality of tyrants in this country has been going downhill for half a century. I mean, they used to really have a stranglehold on the information and the ideas, both by the education system and the propaganda machine of television and radio, that they pretty much had a stranglehold on. And it seemed to me their propaganda was better back then. I mean, now they try things that just hugely backfire and sound ridiculous. I don't watch TV. I don't have a TV in my house. Every once in a while I accidentally see it somewhere else. And when I do, I think, really? This is what they're relying on to keep people enslaved? It's become a ridiculous circus. None of their saviors are even remotely believable. Now, I guess they're believable to some people, like the adoring fans of Führer Obama, but a lot of people are saying, this is a joke, they're a lie, it's a never-ending string of liars and crooks, maybe we need something else. And I think they were better at it before. I think they got lazy because they've been rich and powerful for so long, and now they're completely blowing their game. And suddenly there's this groundswell of people who believe in actual freedom who are coming along, telling the truth and spreading it all over the internet and YouTube and Facebook and everywhere they can.
Well, I think also like you look at 9/11, that was pretty bold of them to do. And but now with the internet, like you look at the Boston Marathon false flag event, within hours, like millions of people around the world were sifting through photographs, videos. They had already figured out what was going on. They found all the people, and then the mainstream media in the U.S. said, "Oh no, it was this kid from wherever, Uzbekistan or wherever he's from." And but the amount of information that people have access to, and there's so many private detectives and actual real journalists, like actually doing real research and not just reading government press releases, is just changing the whole game. Like within hours of their false flag events now, like Sandy hoax, people had already figured it out, and everyone's all just laughing at it. Like, look at this, here's the evidence of how they set this up, and here's the crisis actors and all that kind of stuff. And they can't. So I'm wondering if they're going to try to shut down the internet. But if they do, first of all, they can't really shut it down, but they can really hinder it a lot. Yeah. And if they do, I think that would actually create a revolution, because so many people depend on the internet now. Yeah. Backfire. And people realize, I think, somewhere in their brain, they realize the internet is the only anarchy place on earth still. It's the only place that's still ungoverned, and it's beautiful, and everyone loves it. No one goes, "Oh, I hate the internet." So, I think it changes everything. So it's going to be really interesting these next few years. So just keep up the great work with all your books and videos and keep pushing that message out there. I think it's really changing things.
Yeah, and it has this weird cumulative effect. When 3 people say it and then 100 and 1,000 are out there saying maybe government's illegitimate, most people have still never heard that idea. And now people, they hear it from a few places and they think, maybe I should actually think about that, as weird as it sounds. And yeah, I do think that the stunts that the people in power are trying now are just totally backfiring. I mean, if 9/11 is a classic case, and I rarely even talk about conspiracy theories just because it gets into an argument over facts, and I'd rather have people understand philosophy, and then they can figure out for themselves what the true nature of government is. But if that sort of thing happens and the government goes, "Oh my gosh, terrorists, scary, scary, scary," and a few years later, like half of New York says, "Yeah, we're pretty sure the feds did it," that does not help those in power. Gulf of Tonkin worked perfectly. Yay, rah, 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 let's go be nationalists. But it doesn't work. And if false flag and fear-mongering and, there are terrorists everywhere, if that doesn't work on 99% of the population, it's just going to backfire on the control freaks, which I'm thrilled about. The more backfiring, the better. But they're losing it, and it doesn't matter how desperate or vicious they get; they're still going to lose it. The only way it matters is innocent people are going to get hurt. But they're not going to save their empire. Nothing in the world is going to keep this lie going.
I agree. I wish we had more time. I have this stupid camera. You won't believe this. It's it only can record 22 minutes because of a European government regulation on. They have to pay extra taxes if they record more than 22 minutes because then it'd be a video camera instead of a regular camera. So once again, the government is fucking with us here and ending this interview early. But why don't you let us know where people can get more information on all the stuff you do?
Well, my main website is larkenrose.com, which is LARKENROSE.com. These days, most of what I've been doing is on YouTube. My YouTube channel is just youtube.com/larkenrose. And there's lots and lots of stuff there. And like I said, that's mainly what I've been focusing on. There's even fun discussions that come up under those, and they lead to other videos. So, yeah, that's been my main focus. Oh, and of course, this book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, is available on Amazon and on larkenrose.com, and I've been thrilled with the responses of people saying, yeah, I read that, and by the end I was an anarchist. So, and I've gotten that hundreds of times now, so I'm thrilled.
Oh, there's thousands, I'm sure. Yeah, we'll have all the links to all of your stuff down below, and definitely check out Larken Rose. He's one of the best guys in the freedom and anarchist movement. And that's been another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.